Tom Colicchio presents an uncomplicated first course from New York City with Nantucket Bay scallops just barely warmed through and chickpeas, tomato, and lemon zest. Then from suburban Chicago, David Jarvis presents rice paper-wrapped salmon and cilantro leaves served on tomato cucumber salad, surrounded by cilantro broth. Dessert is served from Mississippi. Thaddeus DuBois offers a chocolate tuile cookie basket containing sponge cake, orange cream, and a variety of fresh fruit. The co-owner and executive chef at Gramercy Tavern in New York is Tom Colicchio. Born in New Jersey of Italian parents, he grew up with a requisite love of good food and wine. In New York, he worked at the Quilted Giraffe and Gotham Bar and Grill before Gramercy. His first course features scallops.
Today we're going to be preparing poached Nantucket Bay scallops with rosemary whipped cream and chickpeas. We have some cooked chickpeas today. We also have a little bit of lemon zest, some picked rosemary. We have some branches of rosemary for the whipped cream, some cream, olive oil for the poaching, a little diced tomato, and the scallops. We're going to start the dish by making the rosemary whipped cream. And we do that by just warming up some cream. And we don't want to let this boil. We're just going to warm it up to about 200 degrees, a couple sprigs of rosemary. After this steeps, we're going to chill it down as quickly as possible, and then we're going to whip it up just like you would a regular whipped cream. And we're just going to put that aside now. You can see that it's just barely simmering. We're going to put that aside, okay? Poach the scallops. And again, we just want to warm the olive oil. We don't want to heat it up too much. Just gently warm it. This is too hot. And then we're going to add a little bit of picked rosemary just to start it. Okay. We'll let this cool down just a little bit. It's a little too warm. Okay. We're going to add our scallops. These are Nantucket Bay scallops. You can use a sea scallop. You just have to cut them down a little bit if you're going to use sea scallops. Obviously, if you're using larger or smaller scallops, just cook them a little less. But we really don't want to cook these. We just want to poach them, just gently. You can see there's a little simmer in the pan, not much really. And I just want to kind of just move them around in the olive oil. And then, actually, I need salt and pepper here. So. I want to season this with salt and pepper. Salt. And we'll turn to the pepper mill. Okay. And then we want to add our chickpeas. And these have been cooked already and then shelled. There's no skin on them. And then we just want to add some diced tomato. This is tomato that's been skinned and seeds removed. Now, as soon as we add the tomatoes, we need to serve the dish. We really don't want to warm them too much. They'll start to fall apart. Okay. Again, it's a very simple dish. And the scallops are really just warmed for this dish. They're pretty much still raw. They're just warmed through slightly. You have to have really high quality scallops to do something like this. And then just a few pieces of the rosemary. And then this is the rosemary whipped cream that we've let cool. We've removed the rosemary and we're just whipping it. You can see it whips up just like regular cream. Take our spoon and just add a little bit of it right to the top of the dish. And what happens is, as the cream starts to melt, it actually melts into the olive oil and makes the sauce. It's really a wonderful dish, very simple.
At the time of this taping, several years ago, Melange restaurant in the Chicago suburb of Northfield offered the food of David Jarvis. His early training included work under Jean Banchet at Le Francais and with Wolfgang Puck in California. Here is his rice paper-wrapped salmon and cilantro broth.
The first thing, I'll start with the coriander broth. I take my blanched coriander or cilantro and I'll put that into a blender. Meanwhile, I'll take my chicken stock and heat it up on the stove. As that's getting hot, I can start making the salad and wrapping the salmon. Taking 2 sheets of rice paper in case one springs a leak, shall we call it, or has a hole in it. We have the second one. Take some cilantro, rough chop it, and put it off to the side. This will be to put into the rice paper with the salmon. Using a towel to pat dry the rice paper. Pull out my second one. Set that off to the side. Very simple. Since I have the two, now I have 2 little parcels, which would have been in 1 paper, but instead I used 2. Using rice vinegar and olive oil as the dressing. I rough chop some cilantro. As we get down to the stemmy area, I go finer. And this will be the greens in this salad. Meanwhile, my coriander broth is almost going to be started now. I have my chicken stock boiling. So I'm going to take several spoonfuls of this and put it into the blanched cilantro or coriander. And the rest, I pour into a pan in an ice bath to chill it down very fast. Hopefully I will keep the nice bright green color. Turn the blender on high. This will take just a moment. I stop it and peek in, see how it's doing. It looks beautiful. I pour that into my chicken stock. Pour some of the stock back into the blender body to get all the excess cilantro out. And now, as fast as possible, I'm going to try to chill this down. So I have a mixture of ice and water so that as much exposure is there.
As the broth chills, the salad is started.
What I have here is pre-grated ginger, which I toss into the cilantro, and my tomato, which I'm using a yellow one. If you have red ones, by all means use red ones. Cutting them in half, get rid of the end that is a little bit tough by the root. Cut them in half again, so we've quartered them, and just slice very thin. The tomato should be ripe, but not overripe, so that it holds together.
Meanwhile, the salmon is started.
I'm using a non-stick pan, so I don't have to worry about the rice paper sticking. I use a little olive oil in it, and excess amount I will just drain off. And once I see a little bit of heat action, a little bubble or any kind, I would put the salmon in. And let it cook up on the slow side first. The side you want presented should be the side you put down. Like other dishes where you have a crust of sort, you want to start it slower than faster. And you can speed up the heat as it goes or turn it down and slow the heat down. So now I let this just simmer away and get nice color. Going back to the cucumber.
The cucumber was peeled and halved.
And in the other one, I'm going to leave the seed in. Kind of a contrast of textures. While I'm cutting the cucumber, I keep glancing over at my salmon to make sure it's not burning. Now I go back and I check my salmon. It's starting to get a little bit of color. Once it has a little bit of color, what I'm going to do now is put it into a hot oven and cook it. Halfway through cooking, I will turn it over. I'll finish up my salad now, putting a little olive oil in and a little bit of rice vinegar. And I'll start getting the dish ready. Put the chopsticks off to the side. So we have a nice little salad that we're going to put the salmon on. I'll take a look at the salmon and see how our color is, and then we'll heat up the sauce. You can see a nice color starting to happen, so now we just turn it over and we finish it in the oven. Depending upon how long you like your salmon to be cooked, meaning rare or medium rare or well done, will depend on how long it spends in the oven. Okay, my pan. Put my coriander broth on the stove, and I'm going to finish it with just a little bit of butter. Shaking the pan and stirring. I don't want the pan to get too hot and be on the stove too long so the coriander dulls. I want to keep it a very nice bright green. Okay, as you can see, it's hot, but it hasn't boiled. Trying to arrange it attractively. And the dish is finished.
Beau Rivage, the sprawling resort and casino on the Mississippi Gulf Coast, features the pastry of the talented Thaddeus DuBois. In 1999, he was awarded first place and a gold medal in the U.S. pastry team competition in Beaver Creek, Colorado. His dessert this time is a chocolate basket with fresh fruit and orange cream.
The next recipe is the orange cream, okay? We're going to start with some milk, 8 ounces of milk. I'm going to put it in a sauce pot. I'm going to reserve a little bit of that, and I'll show you why. A little bit of the cream too. I add the 8 ounces of cream, 2 ounces of sugar, which is half the sugar. Okay. And the orange zest from 2 oranges, okay. The orange will infuse with the milk and the cream once it is heated up. It's 2 ounces of cornstarch and the remaining sugar, the 2 ounces. I mix the sugar and the cornstarch together. It prevents the cornstarch from lumping up. And then I add the little cream and the milk that I saved. And that prevents you from getting any kinds of lumps of starch in the finished product. Let's whisk that up very well. Okay, then I have eggs, 2 of them, and 2 egg yolks. And we'll whisk that in. Want to try to keep it all in the bowl.
After mixing, the cornstarch thickener will be tempered into the hot liquid.
Okay, I'm going to take the cream and milk is heated here. I'm going to temper some of it into the egg yolks and the starch and the eggs. Okay. It's warmed up a little bit. It's sufficient to go back into the hot cream and the milk. And we're going to cook this until it comes to a boil. It's important that it boils because you want to cook the starch. Otherwise, it has a starchy flavor if you don't cook all the starch out of it. Okay. It's okay if it comes to a boil. The eggs and the egg yolks won't curdle because they're actually protected by the starch. The starch surrounds the molecules of the egg yolks and the eggs, prevents them from curdling. So that's why it can boil.
The mixture is stirred constantly and thickens as it is brought to the boil. It's transferred to a bowl covered with plastic wrap and refrigerated.
For the chocolate basket, it's actually a tuile, which is a thin cookie you put in the oven. It bakes flat and crisp, and then you shape it over a container. Okay. Sugar, we have 4.5 ounces of sugar and 4.5 ounces of butter and 5.5 ounces of syrup, corn syrup. You can use dark if you'd like. Just gonna mix those together. It's important that the butter is soft, otherwise you can't do this really. You can do this on a machine if you wish. Okay. Once that's incorporated together, we have pastry flour and cocoa. I also had a little bit of vanilla in there with the butter and the corn syrup when I put that in there. You don't want to mix this too much. Once it's incorporated, that's all you want to mix it. You don't want to overwork the flour or it doesn't spread as nicely in the oven when you bake it. Okay, there you are. Now we're going to make big tuiles, approximately about 5 inches in diameter. So we're going to put it on a half sheet pan of parchment, and you can't put that many or you're going to have trouble spreading and touching each other. So basically you could only put 2 on here. You can put this mix into a piping bag and pipe them if you wish. We'll stick those in the oven. About 350 degrees. It takes about 8 to 10 minutes, 12 minutes maybe. You need to look for the batter stop bubbling. It's important. Sometimes it's hard to tell when chocolate tuiles are done because you can't look at the color because it's chocolate. So it needs to stop bubbling and then they'll be done. Okay. This is just perfect. It's very pliable. Okay. And you can put it right over your container. The nice thing about these, if it gets too cold, stick it back in the oven. You can do that many, many times. And it's no problem. It doesn't affect it at all.
Presentation begins with a round of sponge cake.
Okay, we're ready for a assemble here. I cut the cake out with a circular cutter. I'm just going to set it on the bottom of the tuile. I have the orange cream in a piping bag. I'm just going to pipe some of that on top. And then we're going to decorate it with assorted fruits, and you can use any kind of fruit you like. And the kiwi. And maybe some grapes here. Okay, put that on there. Then I have mango coulis and raspberry coulis for the front of the plate here. And I just like to run a knife through it a little bit. And I put just a dollop of whipped cream in the center of it. A couple chocolate cigarettes. Stick them in there, and just a little bit of mint. And we can hit the outer edge of the plate with a little 10X. There you have a chocolate basket with fresh fruits.